Final Fantasy XIII Lightning Returns, the final piece of the well-loved Final Fantasy XIII. Well, no, actually, I don't think very many people liked Final Fantasy XIII. But it does cap off the story to the highly popular Final Fantasy XIII Part 2. Well, nobody bought 13 Part 2. But it is the spiritual successor to the fan-favorite classic Final Fantasy X Part 2. You know, I just remembered that everybody hated that game. Okay, can we just start over? Can we do that? Roll the clip? Final Fantasy XIII Lightning Returns, for people that liked Final Fantasy XIII, sat through Final Fantasy XIII 2, and thought that Final Fantasy X-2 was kind of okay. I happen to fit into every one of those categories. Final Fantasy XIII introduced a decent enough cast of characters and a very unique and fun battle system. Final Fantasy XIII Part 2 was kind of bad, but, you know, I played it anyway. And I actually find Final Fantasy X-2 to have one of the more fun and unique battle systems. And I will begin elaborating on those points before Final Fantasy snobs begin beating me to death with their Final Fantasy VI cartridges. The battle system is by far the strongest point of Final Fantasy XIII-3. Since the battle system is the thing I have the most positive things to say about, I'm going to go ahead and start with that first. It takes the idea of the battle system in the other Final Fantasies and finds a way to make it a lot more interesting to me. In 13.1 and 13.2, you didn't actually control the other party members, so in this one they were like, well, screw it. If you're not going to control the other party members, let's just have a battle system where you don't even have other party members. You come into battle with 3 different garments on, also called schemata in this game. Anybody who's played Final Fantasy X-2 is going to recognize this right off the bat as the garment grid system. I'm incredibly excited to see the system come back, as I think it's a really fun and unique system. Collecting new schemata and techniques is one of the highlights of this game. In battle, you switch between schemata with the R1 and L1 buttons. To keep you from abusing one job, you actually have to switch between them quite frequently because you have an ATB gauge that goes down every time you use a technique. People who just played the demo, or people who just played the first few minutes, are going to think that this battle system is incredibly simplistic and too easy. The reason for this is you can hold down one button and lightning will automatically go through one chain combo of that technique. For example, if you hold down Blizzard, you'll just cast Blizzard 5 times in a row, and the 5th time will be really powerful. This can lead to just holding down a button and then switching schemata and holding down another button. I wasn't too big a fan of this in the demo, but I actually really like it in the full release. If you couldn't hold down the button to do the combo, you would just end up mashing the button anyway, because every enemy has some kind of weakness. All enemies have some kind of gimmick about them that lets you stagger them. For those who happen to not know, staggering is a Final Fantasy XIII trope where you can take one enemy and put them in a weakened state. Most of the time while they're in this state, they can't attack, and they also take almost double the damage. Because it makes battle so much easier, this is obviously going to be your goal. Most enemies have a pretty simple requirement, like some you just need to deal a lot of magic damage to, or some are weak to one specific element, so you have to deal that one element to them. Once you find every enemy's weak point, it's pretty simple to bring them down. For example, this robot I'm fighting here I remember is weak to lightning damage, so I hit him with lightning until he staggers, and then I hit him with physical attacks, aka hitting him with lightning in a more physical approach. Get it? 'Cause names? I really feel rewarded as a player for learning every enemy's weakness and remembering. Technically, if your memory's not too good, or you're just super lame and don't want to learn every enemy's weakness, and you can just push R2 to bring up the enemy's weaknesses if you've already fought them. The last thing I'll say about the battle system is it gives you the option to walk around and guard. Guarding is incredibly solid, because if you guard at the right moment, you can get this perfect guard which guards for a lot more, or you can hold the button down, it drains your ATB gauge, and you don't guard for as much. Again, we are rewarding skill and allowing an out to people who aren't going to get as skilled at the game. Walking, however, is worthless. Like, it's worthless to the point where I don't even know why it's in the game. In theory, you could walk around enemies or dodge attacks, but walking is so slow during battle that is an absolutely worthless feature to have. I just don't understand why they did this. When Lightning's moving around during pre-animated stuff like attacks and all that, she moves pretty quickly, but she all of a sudden becomes a geriatric when I try to move her. It's cool that they're trying new things, and maybe I'll find the use for it sometime, but it's just dumb if you're not going to implement it all the way. Now that we've talked about the battle system, let's talk about customization, because that's equally as important. Customization is the biggest part of Final Fantasy XIII Part 3. You would think Don't get me wrong, the customization is fantastic. You can make Lightning look pretty awesome, and you can also mess with their skill sets. My only real problem with it is if you're a serious player like I am, you're going to do the same thing I did. Your first one's going to be the one with all of your highest physical attacking items. Your middle one's going to be super tanky with maybe some debuffs and all of your strongest guarding abilities. And your last one's going to be a variety of magic attacks. To anyone who's ever played a Final Fantasy game, this is obviously the optimized way to do it. So even though you can collect over 80 different outfits, the one with your highest attack, the one with your highest defenses, and the one with your highest magic abilities are going to be the ones you always use. I feel like this was handled a little bit better in Final Fantasy X too, because every dress sphere actually had its own unique uses and techniques. In this game, all schematic can equip every item and use every ability. The only difference being that some of them come with their own built-in ability, and that's what makes them unique. So let's say you have a garb with Fire level 1. As soon as you get a garb with Fire level 2 or Fiera, then it's going to be gone. The other half of customization is synthesis. See, you don't level up in this game at all. Enemies don't give any kind of experience. You get all of your abilities off of defeated enemies. If you happen to get two of the same ability, which will happen a lot, you can actually combine them to make them one more powerful ability. I really like this system. It made me feel like defeating all of those enemies wasn't a complete waste of time, because if they drop abilities, I can combine them with my current abilities and make them even stronger, thus making myself stronger. You may have heard me say earlier that you don't get experience from defeating enemies, and that's right. There is no experience in this game at all. This is Final Fantasy XIII-3's different approach on leveling. See, you don't actually have levels. You have base stats that go up when you complete quests. This takes away a little bit of the fun for me. I am one of those people that does kind of enjoy grinding and likes getting stronger, and I like seeing the work I put in yield some results. Since enemies don't give anything but money, fighting them is a lot less interesting. In fact, I think I've skipped about 75% of the battles because without experience, there's really no reason to keep going. I get plenty of money from questing. It's baffling. I don't really understand this at all. The best part of the entire game is the battle system. They came up with a good battle system, but the game actively rewards you for avoiding the battle system. But I don't want to get into a rant. Let's get on to questing. There are three kinds of quests: main quests, side quests, and canvas quests. Main quest is obviously story stuff, and it normally gives you the biggest stat boost. Side quests are given out by random people in towns, and they give a pretty big stat boost, but aren't always quick. Then there's a board called the Canvas that can give you canvas quests, which are normally just collection quests. Defeat 10 enemy, collect 8 leather strips, so on and so forth. There's a huge multitude of quests to do, and you could get really strong doing them, but unfortunately this game is hindered by an overall timer. You see that timer at the right? This is how much in-game time you have to beat the entire game. I didn't want this. I can't think of a single Final Fantasy fan that's going to see this and think, "Oh, that was an amazing idea, I'm so glad they put that in-game timer in." This does lead to a few time-based events, which is pretty cool, but I want to do stuff. I'm a Final Fantasy fan. I want to do all of the side quests. I want to enjoy your game, Square Enix. Let me fight enemies and do quests at my leisure. Because of the overall timer, you can't possibly do every quest in the game. There's just too many. I think Hope himself puts it best.
There's a hard truth we must face. There are thousands of people down in the world waiting to be saved, but you cannot help all of them. It's not possible.
I've only got a handful of days. There just isn't enough time, right?
This will sound cold, but you need to be efficient. Saving people who are suffering under the heaviest burdens will give you more Aradia, which is good for us. But the greater the burden, the more you might have to do before that soul can be saved. Sometimes, solving someone's problem might just take too long.
You're saying I shouldn't waste time on helping the hard cases. I've got to pick and choose who gets saved.
Of course it would be best if you could save everyone, but you can't. It's a numbers game, Light. The more souls you save, the more Aradia you can gather and offer to the tree. The time spent helping one person might be better spent saving the souls of 10 others.
Efficiency by volume, is that it? A numbers game, like you say. Control costs and maximize profits. What is it that they say? Time is money.
Admittedly, this is an interesting idea, but there's just so much that I want to do. I want to do the harder quests, because that's part of the fun. Going, finding a challenging enemy, and then grinding for a little while, and then beating it. That would be great. Because then I could go and do a couple of lower quests, and then every time I think I'm strong enough, I could come back and try to fight it. But because of the time restraint, I just can't. If that in-game timer runs out, you're done. You're either starting the entire game over, or you're starting from another save. Other games like Majora's Mask have done this correctly. I don't really know what the point was here. So I've avoided it long enough. The last things we're going to talk about are characters and story. People who beat 13.2 are going to want to know, does the story get progressively better? The simplest answer I can give you is no, the story does not get better. If we're just going story-wise, you could pretty much cut this game down to about 2 to 3 hours and just have put it at the end of Final Fantasy XIII Part 2, and that's the honest truth. I like this game. I really, really do enjoy this game, but I cannot lie to you and tell you that the story is good because the story is not good. Without giving any spoilers away, Lightning is now Jesus, and God wants Jesus to go and collect souls because God isn't too happy about the way the world's been going and wants to just destroy it and create an entirely new one, as God would do. Most people who played Final Fantasy XIII are probably facepalming right now, and you have every right to do so. As if the premise itself wasn't bad enough, it's just sloppy and clunky, and there's so many plot holes it's not even funny. The characters fare a little bit better, but barely. Just barely. I'm one of the few people that finds Lightning an incredibly interesting character. Her personality evolution from the beginning of the first game to this game is really awesome. She's still a little bit shy and a little bit emo, but it has a lot more impact now. She seems like somebody who genuinely cares about what she's doing now and realizes how much she really likes other people. Everybody else, not so much. The designers pretty much picked one personality or one thing they want to drive every character, and their character is completely driven by that one thing. It's incredibly two-dimensional and I don't like it. Also, none of the new characters they added are very interesting either. It's pretty boring. The biggest casualty of characters has got to be Hope S-Time. They turned him into a total baller in Final Fantasy XIII Part 2, and in this one he is a straight-up Navi knockoff. Oh, wait, you think I'm kidding? You think I'm just making fun of him for the sake of making fun of him? Hope talks to you through radio, and let's just look at a quick scene of Hope talking to you through the radio.
The clock is your enemy. Find the last number before dusk falls, and it should gather for their rights.
Yeah, I know, Hope. I can't get the last number till midnight.
You escaped from harm, but in the outside world, a whole hour has passed already.
Yeah, I know, Hope, but I saw the number change, but I can't do anything until midnight anyway.
You're so close. You've almost solved the puzzle. You just need the last number. Where could it be?
I know where it is. I can't actually go there, until midnight.
Hopefully we'll be able to find out more about this mysterious shadow hunter. Good. Now hurry. If they complete the ritual, another girl... Noel Christ. Do you remember him, Light? He's the one who took your sister Sarah on a quest through time. He chose to and to fight for a better world. Yes, it did end in her death, but that wasn't your responsibility. And in the same way, he chose to become the Shadow Hunter. We're in at last.
I just want him to stop. I could probably go on about this game forever, but this obviously needs to be wrapped up pretty soon. Final Fantasy XIII-3 in its own regard is a pretty great game. It brings a great mixture of old battle system and new battle system for a really dynamic feel. Playing the game itself is really fun. The game is hindered, however, by its overall timer, which limits how much fun you're allowed to have, and some pretty boring character development. The story is also not very good at all whatsoever. If you haven't been with the Final Fantasy XIII series up until this point, then I don't recommend picking this game up at all. This will give you a horrible impression of the rest of the series. And if you already have a horrible impression of the rest of the series, this isn't going to change your mind in the slightest. If you have been with the series, however, I think you owe it to yourself to pick this game up. I think you'll really appreciate what they've done with the battle system and how Lightning's character progresses. Just try not to take the story too seriously, and don't get too attached to any of the characters. Thank you for watching my Final Fantasy XIII Part 3 Lightning Returns review. If you liked what you saw, then hit that like button, because those things really help me out. If you want to see more content, including a let's play of this game, then subscribe to stay up to date on the latest Kudou news. Lastly, leave me your thoughts or experiences with the game in the comments section below. That's it for today. Oh yeah, some of you are gonna wonder why I didn't talk about the online Demon Souls-ish component. There's an online thing where you can sell items to other players and show them screenshots, and it sucks. Bye!